All right, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for coming. This is the Perl Family Tree, Discovering Our Heritage. I'm Will the Chill. Some of you may know me by my legal name, Will Braswell. And I'm going to walk you through quite a few of the different incarnations of Perl. We're going to be building an actual family tree that we will finish at the end of the presentation. And who's my moderator? You are? You're going to give me signals and stuff like that? Okay. So, in the beginning, we had St. Larry. I don't know why it's zoomed down, but oh well. That's what we'll go with. And of course, we all know Larry. He's always here at the conferences, and he is a brilliant person who took all of these different ideas that were already out there and mixed them up in his super smart brain, and that was back in the, I guess we could consider it mid to late 80s, really, when I believe that started to take shape in his mind. Why did he do that? Well, I think many of us have heard the stories that it was simply considered that there was no tool that had combined all of these features that Larry wanted. There was regular expressions, there was searching and other string manipulation. There was the ability to glue together different programs using the shell scripting and so forth. But there was no grand unified plan. And you know, for general purpose programming, you would have to use something like C at that point, a statically compiled language, which, as I'm sure many of us know, is not always the most enjoyable language to use. And often in Perl, we try to optimize for fun. So hopefully Perl was more fun than a lot of these things that came before it. So Larry combined together a lot of these ideas and came up with what we call Perl 5, Perl 1 through 5. They're all the same code base. Okay, so that was the same with whatever evolutions, of course, had taken place, but it was essentially the same code base, and it still is the same that we use now for Perl. So when you say I'm programming in Perl, what you mean is I'm programming in Perl 5, which is the latest version of the original Perl programming language. And so as we see, this was 1987 that this took place, and that was, I guess you could call it Perl 1.0, or that series, the 1.0 series, or the 0.x series of Perl was in the late 80s. And this is written in C, so it's the C programming language, and it is essentially as some of you in the audience, I'm sure, are aware, comprised largely of macros, C macros. So it's a pre-processing language for C that allows you to do some really powerful things with C, such as run on different platforms and different operating systems that have different integer lengths and things like that. And it allows Perl's data types, the scalar values and array values and hash values and so forth. It allows those data types, which are C structs, they can run on all of the different platforms that Perl can run on, which is pretty much any platform that you can compile C89, because it's C89 that was used to create Pumpkin Perl, which we also give the 1987 timestamp, because this was the same implementation we're talking about. The pumpkin is the implementation, and in this visual, the camel is what we'll consider to be a specification. And I should clarify here, because it is a little bit confusing. The camel is at least partially symbolic of the Camel book, which is what the image comes from, that was published by O'Reilly. And this book expounds upon the Perl language, the Perl 5 language, to a great detail, but is not officially a specification. So the only official specification of the Perl 5 language is the pumpkin, which is an implementation. So the implementation of the language, written in C89, that I just mentioned, all those macro codes, that implementation acts as or serves as the specification. So in many other software projects, the specification is a written document of some kind, or a UML or something that's not actual source code. Okay, it's something that's more closer to human readable language, or flowcharts or something like that. But in Perl 5, the specification is actually this specific implementation of the language. And as we'll see, there are others. So anything that calls itself Perl 5 must do everything that the pumpkin can do. And so this is, again, it's a little bit complicated and confusing, and we'll try and work around this confusion as we go. Another version or edition of Perl, we'll call it editions because versions are generally numbers, and editions are generally a type of that particular software. So active Perl is a type of Perl. It is actually, it comes from the pumpkin, which means it is actually a recompiled copy of that C89 code. They did not rewrite the Perl code for the Perl interpreter. And it was the Active State Corporation which compiled this to be a commercially available version of Perl. And there's sort of two important things about that. The first is that it was the first big version that was running in Windows really successfully and widely. And so companies that had Windows and wanted to use Perl could use this. And secondly, it did support Linux and other operating systems as well, so it gave corporations a good reason to adopt Perl when they had mixed operating systems, because usually the corporations would have a lot of people on Windows and a few people like programmers or technical employees that would be using Linux or something else. And you could purchase a commercial license and pay a certain amount of money each month or each year, and if something breaks, you can call up the tech support at Active State and they'll help you fix it. And this is still available now. It's a currently available software product. And you know, if you need a commercial version of Perl, this is one of your best options. This is a commercially available version of Perl itself. No, I don't work for Active State, never have. Not trying to push their version, I'm just saying there's not a whole lot of commercial editions of Perl. I should stop saying versions, commercial editions. Shortly after Active Perl came Pony. This is Perl on new internal engine. You'll notice this does not come from the pumpkin. It comes directly from the camel. And the reason for this is because it does not use that C89 code. This is actually new code that was written, and it was meant to run on a virtual machine called Perl, we'll talk about in a little bit. And it was a very important project, even though it did not last, because it showed that at least there was a interest and possibility of re-implementing Perl 5. Because as I had mentioned, Active Perl was not a re-implementation of Perl 5. It was just a recompiled edition of that C89 code. So Pony, as I said, Perl on new internal engine. The internal engine would be a parsing and compiling of your Perl 5 input code and a generating of the opcodes or commands for the, as I had mentioned, parrot virtual machine that we'll circle back to. And it never worked out. Pony was put out to pasture, as we say. And so that project did die, and it was very sad because I was personally very hopeful that Pony would have been successful. And just imagine what this conference would be now if we had a completely reimplemented version of Perl 5 13 years ago. I mean, everything would be different now. We wouldn't be arguing about any of the things we're arguing about now, probably. The world would be a different place for us in Perl. But, as I said, that did not happen. After Pony, we switched back again to some code that did come out of the pumpkin. Vanilla and strawberry Perl. I've got strawberry Perl expert with us, dressed as a strawberry here in the audience. Bulk 88. One of our most famous secret identities, pseudo secret. And Bulk and I have worked a lot to get stuff working in strawberry Perl. This is the community edition of Perl for Windows. And vanilla was short-lived. Strawberry lives on. Strawberry is the suggested open source edition of Perl for Windows. So if you're going to use Perl in Windows and you don't want to go buy something for money right now with ActiveState, then you can just immediately go ahead and download Strawberry and work with it. And if you're really, hard up and stuck in Windows, or you just love it so much, like I know Bulk does and some others, you can combine pumpkin, vanilla, and strawberry with another tool called Chocolatey. There never was a chocolate Perl, although it was planned, but there is a Chocolatey tool, and it helps you install Perl and a lot of other things in Windows. It's a suggested companion, Chocolatey. So strawberry and Chocolatey, which is an addition of pumpkin through vanilla, is currently the suggested tool chain and stack of Perl open source in Windows. It sounds hilarious, but it is very true. And I guess you could consider it delicious once it gets working. When it's not, oh my goodness, it's like a badly made banana split with no bananas and something else instead, I don't know. Moving on, something that did not come out of the pumpkin. Again, something that came out of the idea or the pseudo specification of Perl 5, because again, the real specification of Perl 5 is the pumpkin itself. Perlito. Perlito is a very interesting project by Flavio Glock over in the Netherlands. And essentially, Perlito is a reimplementation of Perl 5 that emits JavaScript as its output. And so it's more complicated than that. It's way more complicated than that. In fact,